It's amateur video. It's shaky. It reportedly shows rebel fighters attacking a Christian village. Once again, rebel fighters, the ones we'd be siding with, attacking a Christian village in Syria for a second straight day. We can't independently confirm the video's authenticity or anything else in this conflict. That small village is now under the control of the government. Witnesses say rebels with reported ties to Al-Qaeda seized a hotel, fired shells on the neighborhood, killed at least 8 government soldiers. It's the same bloody scene repeated day in and day out in Syria for 2 years. In all, the United Nations reports it's left more than 100,000 people dead, and they can't be sure of that number. Nobody can. The UN reports the fighting has chased some 7 million people from their homes, something the organization called the great tragedy of this century. President Obama has repeatedly said it is up to the world to act, but he is fully aware that we are the only ones in the world about to act. He is having trouble building an international coalition. In fact, he can't do it. The Fox Report chief correspondent Jonathan Hunt is here in studio. U.S. officials said bluntly today that the United Nations is irrelevant in this crisis, and of that, we can all be certain.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure around the world for President Obama to go back to the United Nations Security Council for authorization for any potential military action, but that seems highly unlikely, given the comments today from our ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power. She said that the majority of the nations in the world signed a treaty against the use of chemical weapons, even during wartime. President Assad, in the U.S. officials' view, has used those weapons, and that therefore those countries, which by the way include all members of the UN Security Council, now have to step up to the plate. But she said the Security Council is making itself irrelevant. Listen.
It has not protected peace and security for the hundreds of Syrian children who were gassed to death on August 21. It is not protecting the stability of the region. It is not standing behind now an internationally accepted ban on the use of chemical weapons.
Unusually blunt language from an ambassador to the UN, and clear evidence, it would seem, Shep, that President Obama has no intention at this point of going back to the Security Council.
They were more specific today, our leaders, about the coalition that they are attempting now to build.
Yes, State Department spokeswoman was asked very specifically about this coalition and whom it exists of right now. She named 9 nations. They are Australia, Albania, Kosovo, Canada, Denmark, France, Poland, Romania, and Turkey. She said that they have publicly supported military action being taken by the United States. Interesting in that Secretary of State John Kerry said yesterday on the Hill that 34 nations are backing the United States without naming those 34. Secretary Kerry, by the way, is traveling to Europe this weekend. There he's going to have one particularly important meeting, I think, Shep, with the Arab League. Their statement following that meeting will be key as to how the international community develops its response.
2 things. First, the Arab League is officially on the record. Not only, they're not agnostic about this, they're like, don't do this, right? Yes?
Yes, but they've made 2 statements. The first one said there needs to be action against Assad. He is responsible for that chemical weapons attack. A few days later, they came out with the statement you're referencing. So clearly, Secretary of State Kerry would like to change their minds again.
Right. And the other matter is, we talk about building a coalition. How many nations, aside from our nation, are actively considering or even discussing the possibility of getting involved?
Yeah, you break that down from those 9, you get 1. That is, France is the only nation that appears at this point to be willing to join us in actually taking action.
And that's Francois Hollande, who doesn't need permission from Parliament or anything else. He can just do what he wants to do, but he's made no commitment.
He's made no commitment, but he's made every indication that France is willing to act itself and actually give something to the military operation if it happens.
We'll see. Jonathan, good. Thank you. French intelligence that Syria has up to 1,000 tons of chemical weapons. Think of this, 1,000 tons of chemical weapons. And many analysts have said they consider the stockpile to be the largest active stockpile in all the world. What happens if you strike chemical weapons? What happens then? They blow up. And what happens then? A lot of people die. So we're not doing that. Can't do that. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, has previously said that we would need troops on the ground to gain control of those weapons. Hear that? Troops on the ground. Admiral Dempsey said that in a letter to the head of the House Armed Services Committee. Said it when? Not years ago, in July. He wrote, thousands of special operations forces, again, thousands of special operations forces and other ground forces would be needed to assault and secure critical sites. Thousands. Reports indicate those sites are scattered all over Syria, and that some are producing chemical weapons while others are for storage and others are for research and development. Jennifer Griffin, live at the Pentagon. What has the Pentagon said about its strategy regarding all these boots on the ground that General Dempsey said would be necessary?
Well, General Dempsey said 75,000 troops would be needed for that mission, but that's not their mission. And so we asked the Pentagon today about the internal contradiction in their strategy. Here's Pentagon spokesman George Little.
If regime change is not involved, if boots on the ground are not involved, if the target sets do not include chemical weapon storage facilities because of concerns of releasing the sarin into the air, how do you assure people that this mission will deter him from using the weapons again or from sharing them with Hezbollah?
Well, if I were in the Syrian military right now, facing the prospect of U.S. military action with support from international partners, I think it would make me think twice about using chemical weapons again.
That's presuming the regime survives. All bets are off if the Pentagon does what last night's Senate resolution called upon it to do, change the momentum on the battlefield, which could lead to the fall of Assad and the release of those chemical weapons into who knows hands.
Yeah, we don't even know. And they're talking about the cost of this again, right?
That's right. We've heard for months how sequestration and its $500 billion in across-the-board cuts would harm the Navy and other services. Now it seems the Pentagon isn't so concerned about money.
If this operation goes forward, if we're asked by the President to conduct a military mission, we will conduct it. When something is that important, we'll find a way to pay for it.
Defense Secretary Hagel said yesterday the cost would be in the tens of millions of dollars. But the chief of naval operations, whose ships would be called on to carry out a limited strike, gave a different impression this morning.
A carrier strike group operating out there will cost you in extended operations, so I'm talking about a lot of flying going on as opposed to, say, routine flying, will cost you about $40 million a week. If it isn't flying that much, say routine, it's about $25 million a week.
Tomahawks cost about $1.5 million a piece. The bottom line, Shep, the Pentagon doesn't know how much this will cost because they don't know, as of now, what their mission is. Shep?
Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon. Jennifer, I hope you don't have too busy a week. Of course, we do not take military action against Syria. It has the potential to raise all sorts of legal questions if we do this. Judge Andrew Napolitano. Actually, there are no legal questions. No legal questions. This is illegal, isn't it?
Yes, it is illegal under international law, and it's illegal under the Constitution. I'll tell you why. Under international law, these are accepted international standards that every civilized country has accepted. You can use military force to attack somebody that's attacked you, or you can use military force to attack someone that's about to attack you. Neither of those apply with respect to Syria. You can use military force to come to the aid of an ally that has been attacked when the ally asks for your assistance. That doesn't apply to Syria.
Like Bush the First across the line with Saddam in Kuwait.
Yes, precisely. And you can use military force to enforce international norms against a government that violated the international norms when authorized to do so by the United Nations. And that hasn't happened here. So under none of the four standard ways to use military force under international law would this aerial assault or troops on the ground, whatever it becomes if it happens, apply. Domestic law is a little different. We all know that under the War Powers Act, which was enacted in 1973 over President Nixon's veto, the president can start any war he wants, against anybody he wants for 90 days, and there's nothing the Congress can do about it. Nevertheless, knowing he has this authority, President Obama has asked for specific authorization to do this in order to give him, I would suggest, some political cover. Is the War Powers Act constitutional? Can Congress give its war-making power away to the president? Answer, no.
Nope, can't do it.
Can Congress tell the president how to wage war? Answer, no. Meaning, if the president is unleashed to do whatever he wants in Syria, Congress cannot stop him from putting the 75,000 boots on the ground that Jennifer Griffin just told us General Dempsey said would be necessary.
So if they do this, we've committed a war crime.
Yes. And what are the sanctions? No judge is going to stop this. No one is going to prosecute the president for this. The American public doesn't want this to happen. Our allies in the region don't want this to happen. Who wants this to happen besides John Kerry and the president?
So flying around, back to cost real quick. Flying around costs $25 to $40 million a week.
Right.
Tomahawk missiles cost $1.5 million per.
Estimate 160 would have to go in.
They estimate
200 million right there.
That's 200 million. On day one of the Gulf War, I don't know, we knocked off 288 of them.
Wow.
So $500 million on day one of that war. It wasn't long ago when they said, we're running out of money, remember?
Right.
And today they said, we'll figure out a way to pay for it.
We'll figure out.
The Saudis, thankfully, have agreed to pay for it as they're sort of treating us as their mercenaries, I suppose.
Look, the problem is that sometimes the president can get lawless, any president, when he has military equipment at his disposal. No one seems to care about the law here. They just seem to care about politics. Congress lets the president start a war. The president doesn't care what international law says. He wants to be vindicated politically for an ill-advised statement he made during the campaign a year ago. If they cross that red line, we'll have to do something about it.
You know, over the last few days, it looks as if they don't have the votes. And interestingly, the word from the Hill is that John Boehner, who says he's for it, he's not out trying to get votes. Often they wheel and deal in Washington to get members to do what leaders want them to do. They give you, trade you this, trade you that. That's not happening.
Fox News learned early this morning from a member of the Republican leadership that what you say is correct, that they are not, quote, whipping, meaning they're not pushing their membership in this way, even though the Speaker himself is in favor of it.
Wonderful.
The last unofficial count in the House of Representatives, I know we're 4 or 5 days shy of the vote, it loses by 20 votes.
Judge, thank you.
Pleasure.
A woman